Hi, this is Darlene from Digital Photo Mentor. Welcome to another Lightroom tutorial. Today I'm going to give you a step-by-step look at my process of getting my images from my camera memory card into my computer and into Lightroom. We're going to start with the first step, which is putting your card in and setting up your preferences in Lightroom. I've got some previous articles that I've done on Lightroom catalogs and setting up your preferences to set up Lightroom and give yourself a foundation of which to work. So I recommend that if you haven't read those and had a look at those, do so now. I'll give you a link below the video. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I use external hard drives to store my images. So even though I work on a laptop, I don't store any of my images on the laptop. They're all on external drives. This one happens to contain my Cuba images. It's a portable drive. I take it with me when I travel. And everything that I shot in Cuba, I've downloaded onto here, except for one card. So I'm going to plug this drive in. And the second thing is I have my memory card and my little Fuji X-T1 camera. So I'm going to take my memory card, make sure your camera's turned off, take my memory card out, and plug that into the computer. So I'm going to get that set up. Go set your system up, and I'll meet you back here in a moment. Okay, so as you can see, I've got quite a few images of Cuba here, and these are ones that I had previously imported and I worked on a little bit when I was actually there. Didn't have a lot of time, but I like to do that if I can. I've currently got them sorted by capture time, and as you can see, I have not renamed the files. So right now they are still the original camera file, the DSF file name, which is assigned by Fuji. So I have not done that because I wanted to get them all imported first and then rename sequentially in order in which I took them. Because sometimes when you're downloading, you might get a card, you might get them downloaded in the different order than what you shot them in, or if you get your cards mixed up. So I want to make sure that I have them all and then I number in order. So I'm going to rename and do my numbering later, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that. So you can see that my images are all in a folder called Cuba, which is in a subfolder or a header folder called Images, which is on my Elements drive, which is that portable one that I showed you. Okay, so Lightroom is great in that it shows you where your files live, and if you ever lose them, it's really easy to find them. You can just right click and say, show me where it is in the library, or show me where it is in Finder or Windows Explorer if you're on Windows, and there are your files. Okay, so it's really easy to find your files once you have them in Lightroom. It's a great archiving and searching program as well as processing. So the first thing I want to do is put my card in. Now, if you have your Lightroom preferences set up the way I do, so you can just go to Lightroom Preferences. If you're using Windows, it might be under a different menu. And what you'll see on the first screen on the General tab is an option that says Show Import Dialog when a memory card is detected. I have that checked off so that when I plug my memory card in, it automatically shows the Import Dialog box inside of Lightroom, assuming that Lightroom is currently running. So that should happen when I push my card in. So I'm just going to give it a little push and connect it into the drive. And there we have the dialog box. So it worked just like I expected it to work, which is good because technology doesn't always do what you want it to do. So here are the images that are on the card that I just plugged in, and I haven't previously downloaded any of them. So what I want to do is walk you through this dialog box a little bit and show you some of the things that are available for you to set up as custom presets or that you can change anytime. The advantages of using some presets are that it speeds up your workflow if it's something that you do all the time. So over on the left hand side, let's start with the dialog box. On the left hand side is the import box where the images are coming from. So the left hand part here is going to show you they're from. Okay, so it's untitled, that's my memory card. Okay. The middle section here is going to show you what is on the card. It's going to give you previews. Okay, you can change the size of the previews and you can change how they're sorted by this dialog box down here. Okay, so you can see one or you can see a grid. And you can sort by file name or by capture time. So I want to sort by capture time because that's how I've got the other ones already in the catalog sorted. If you've previously imported images from a card, you can actually tell it new photos, and it'll usually sort through and delete or gray out the ones that you've already downloaded, so you don't end up with a bunch of duplicates. Okay. At the top here, this is the most important part of this section of the dialog box. So it's what you want to do with your photos. So you have 4 choices. You can add them to your catalog, which is for if you already have the images downloaded onto your drive, you just want to put them into Lightroom. That is not the case here. You can move them, which I almost never recommend doing. I don't use that option ever. You can copy them, which is generally what you want to do when you're bringing them from the memory card. So you want to leave them on the card and make a copy on your hard drive, okay? Or you can copy as a DNG. So when I talked about some of your workflow steps in a previous article, I talked about converting to DNG. The benefits of DNG are that it's slightly compressed over a raw format file, depending on your camera type. And they say a lot of things, right? That moving forward into the future, DNG will be supported, whereas older raw format files may not. So let's say, for example, my classic 5D, which is almost 10 years old now, Lightroom may not support those in the future. So by converting them to DNG, I can make sure that I can always access my older raw files. Okay. In this particular case, I'm not going to convert when I import, but you can. So that's a choice that you can make when you are importing. You can also convert them later, and I'll show you how to do that as well. And over here on the right-hand side of the dialog box, we have where are they going to go and what are you going to do with them. So this is also really important because you want to know where you're going to store your pictures. I find that a lot of times when I'm helping students, they run through a lot of these import things and they don't actually know where they put their photos. So that little right click in Lightroom that I showed you is handy to find them, but also make a conscious decision of where to store your pictures before you do it. So as you can see right now, it's defaulting to my Macintosh hard drive in my pictures folder. That is not where I want to put these. So I want to put them on the same drive as all the others and store them in that Cuba folder. So by clicking on this up here, it will let you select a new location for your files. Okay, so just choose Other Destination and navigate to your drive where you want to store them. So you can see my file structure, well that's on my Elements drive, Images, and Cuba. So I've got them all in one folder and I'm going to choose that folder because I want to put the rest of them in the same place. Okay, so now you can see that that has been changed and it's reflecting where it's going to save them as that location that I just selected. Okay. The next section is all about file handling. So let's deal with one of these sections at a time. I'm just going to close all these up and you can do that with these little triangles. So we'll go one section at a time. The next one is previews. Okay, so building your previews. So Lightroom builds these little previews so that when you're working with the program, you're able to see your images. So it doesn't actually bring your images into Lightroom. The images live on your hard drive. It's just bringing in a small version so that you can see it and work with it. Okay, so when you decide what size of preview to make, it's going to do 2 things. It's going to decide how quickly it draws on your screen so you don't get that little hourglass or the little rainbow spinny thing waiting for it to draw. It's also going to determine how long it takes to import and make your previews. Okay, if you're not concerned about how long it takes to make your previews, choose the 1-to-1. So 1-to-1 means it's going to make full-size previews of your images. It's going to take up more space on your hard drive, which is where your catalog lives. That will be your main computer area. For me, it's my laptop. Right? That's going to take more space, but it means that you can work with them quicker. So you can process, you can develop, and you don't ever have to wait for the image to draw. Okay? One of the things that I suggest setting up in your preferences is to delete 1-to-1 previews after 30 days. So if you have made a whole bunch of these large previews and you're working with your files, assuming that you work with your images and then you're done after 30 days, it will delete them all. Okay, for this one, I'm actually going to just do standard, and you'll see it does take a little while, so we're going to pause the video and come back when we're ready. Smart Previews is another option that's new to Lightroom 5, I believe. If you make smart previews, you can actually work with your files and process them in the develop panel without the hard drive where the original raw files are connected even. Okay, so that's helpful if you're traveling and you want to do some processing. You can still work in the develop panel, and then when you plug your hard drive back in with the raw files, you can actually apply those same develop settings on the originals. I'm not going to need that for this one, but that's something as an option so that for you to know about. Okay. You can tick off don't import suspected duplicates. I don't think I have any because I haven't downloaded this card before. And you can also make a second copy or backup at the same time. I generally don't do this, especially if I haven't renamed them yet. The reason being is if I make a backup copy to a second hard drive with the original file name, as it's going to do in this case, then I rename in Lightroom. Now I have my backup and my originals 2 different names. Okay, this can cause a problem. How do I know that? Because I created that problem myself. So do as I say, not as I've done. Okay, so use my mistakes from the past and learn from them so that you don't make the same mistakes. So if you do that, you can certainly back up with the original file names, rename later. Just remember to redo your backup to match with the same file names so that your backup images have the same names as your originals, because if they don't, Lightroom will not recognize them as the same files and you'll have to start all over. Trust me, it's heartbreaking. Don't do that. So in this case, I'm not going to make the copy originally. I'm going to do my backup manually. So that's it for the file handling section. The next section down is called file renaming. In this case, I mentioned I'm not going to be renaming, but I'm going to show you the options that you have here. So as soon as you activate that, you'll notice that you have some choices. There's something called template, which allows you to set up a preset. Okay, so presets, like I mentioned earlier, are things that help you do things in a faster manner. So what that means is that you can set up something that you want to use over and over again. So in my case, I've set up a template for how I like to name my files. So mine is called a shoot name, the date, and then 4 digits. So let's just plug in Cuba here to show you what that might look like. So you can see that if I plug in the name Cuba, it pulls the month and the year and gives it a 4-digit sequential number. Okay, so that's how I go about numbering my files, which I'll show you when I do the entire set of images, but we're not going to do it here on import. I'm going to do it once they're all in and sorted in order. Okay, because I'm going to make another little change, and I'll show you when I get them imported, of changing the time, because I forgot to correct the time zone when I went to Cuba, and I'll show you how you can fix that too. Handy. So you can go in here and set up different templates by editing, and a little dialog box will pop up. Oops. Apparently it pops up on your other screen. So a little dialog box will pop up with all the templates that you've saved and that Lightroom comes built with. So the templates, the default templates. Okay, so you can do a custom name and a sequence. You can add the date. You can use the original file number. Right? I like to rename with something that I'm going to recognize. I use a name, so it's usually a place if I'm traveling, or an event name or something like that. And then I like to use the date and the year, the month and the year. You could use the full date if you want, you know, with the 03, 02, 2015, or however you want it to look. And then I've also chosen a 4-numbered sequence, 4-digit sequence. Okay, I like 4 digits because I know that I've shot at least 1,000 images from Cuba, so I'm going to need at least that many. If you've shot a lot more, then you might want to go an extra digit. Okay, so I usually have at least enough digits to cover the number of images that I've shot, or have a 0 at the front. Okay, so those are my naming structures. So I can edit that and save a new one if I like. Right, so you can just save a new preset. So once you decide on your naming structure, you might not want the date. Maybe you just want the name and the sequence, and that's fine too. Okay, so once you decide on your name, you can save it as a preset, and you can close this, and then this will show up here. Anything you save as a naming preset will show up here as an option for you. Okay, so I'm not going to rename at this time, but let's just pretend that we are for the moment. Okay. It's going to show you roughly what that file name is going to look like here. So let's move on to the next panel, which is apply during import. Okay, so this is some things in Lightroom that starts to get really powerful. Okay, so these are develop settings. So anything that you do in the develop panel that you can save as a preset, you can actually apply on import. Okay, so you can create a special import preset that does a vignette, that adds clarity, that adds contrast, that shifts the color a bit more yellow, anything you like, corrects for lens distortions, and so on. And save that as an import preset. Then when you come in here, you can have that apply to every photo, or you can get really specific and say, only apply chromatic aberration to photos shot with my wide lens or a particular lens. So you can get really sophisticated with how you apply your presets on import. I generally don't apply develop presets when I import. I find that it's fairly simple to and quick to do that once I get into the module itself, but you certainly could if there's a look or something that you want to apply to every image. Okay? In this second section, metadata, this is where you can set up your copyright information and have that applied and put into the background of your files on all of your images. I do that on import for everything. Okay, if you don't have a copyright one set up, if it says none, okay, go under new and create a new one. And the information you want to fill in is your information, so your creator. Okay, copyright, you want to tell if it's copyright. Obviously, if you don't want people copying your image, put your name in here. If you want to put your images as Creative Commons, you can do that. Okay, or you could say all rights reserved, whatever you want to put in here for copyright. You can put your website if you want here. Okay. If you're registering your images with a copyright office, which is in the US, you would put the information in here, the URL to it. And then you can also add your information here. So if somebody does happen to find your image and wants to know who made it to give you proper credit or to purchase it from you, you want to fill in this metadata. I generally don't give my phone number because that's kind of personal, but I do give my website and my email, and I just give my city and my province so they know where I am. So those are the things that I fill in. And then once you've done that, you just save that as a preset, just like I have here. So save current as a new preset. It'll ask you to give it a name. Okay, so copyright sample, let's just call it that. I can't spell. Okay, and now it's listed here as one of your choices. Okay. You can see I've done this a few times. Okay. Time to update that. I've got a new website. Okay, so then I'm just going to close that. And apply my usual copyright. Okay, so the next section here under apply during import is keywords. Okay, keywording is a really powerful tool that you can use in Lightroom or in Photoshop or any program, and even when you upload your images into things like Flickr or 500px or a lot of these image sharing sites will actually pull from your keywords and your metadata to help people find your images. So if you're wanting to sell your images, adding keywords is key to getting your images found. Okay, so in this case, you want to add keywords that are applicable to everything in this set. So for this one, it's going to be Cuba, travel, and photo tours. Okay, because this was on one of my photography tours while I was traveling, and it definitely is in Cuba. Okay, I might get more specific once I bring everything into the catalog and go by city and add tags for things like cars and such. But in here, apply keywords that are going to be applicable to the entire set. Okay. So we'll finish up with the apply during import section and go to destination. Now because we set this up at the top, it should automatically be showing us where those images are going, and you can see that it is. Okay, so you shouldn't have to do anything down here if you did your job up top. Okay, so that is it for the options that you have in the import dialog box. The other thing that you can do is actually make the whole thing a preset. So if you want to every time use the same naming structure and the same file, the same preview type, the same develop presets, the same keywords, all of those things, right? You can actually create a preset and import preset, okay? So again, like any of the presets that are made in Lightroom, you can create it and then tweak it once you apply it. Okay, so I've got one that's just basic import, one that says apply copyright, one that says convert to DNG, right? So you'll notice that if I click this one, it's going to change up here to DNG, okay? So you can decide what, okay, now I've got different copyright as well, okay? So whatever you apply in your presets, you can save. You can have multiples of them, okay? So if you have different copyright like me under different names, or if you have different things that you want to apply, okay, save it as a preset. And you can then easily get to it from here. So all the stuff we did on the right-hand side, you could literally do with one click. And then you just have to go in and fill in your keywords and fill in your copyright information and so on, okay? You need to put in your file name here because otherwise you're going to end up with everything called untitled, okay? Okay, so I'm just going to undo everything I just did here. Let's put it back where we did. Okay, so notice how I clicked that preset and it changed everything. Now I have to go back and put them all back how I had them. Okay. Cuba, travel, photo tours. Okay, so we should be back where we left off. And we're going to the Elements drive in the Cuba folder. Okay, so now, having done all of that, we're actually ready to do our import. Ooh, let's go back to copy. Okay, so now we're ready to do our import. And you simply go down to the bottom here and click import. One thing to note here is that if you don't see all of this, there's this little triangle over here on the bottom left. It'll shrink the dialog box down. So if for some reason you're not seeing all of these options, there should be a triangle on the lower left. Click it and it will expand your dialog box and it'll look more like this. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click import. And you'll see that it's going to start doing its job. You can see the status bar on the upper left here. Okay, so it's doing copy and import. It'll tell you right here how many it's doing, right? And I didn't look at the number of the files on the card, but it's probably going to take a little while. If you chose larger previews and if you chose to convert at the same time, you might as well go for coffee or go for something, do something else for a while and come back because it's probably going to take a little while. So I'm actually going to pause the video and I'll come back once those are all imported into my catalog. Okay, we're back. So now all the images from that card have been imported. So in the top left-hand side of Lightroom, in the library module, you will see where it says catalog and previous import. So that's the number of files that came from that card and got imported. So there's 155. Okay, now they also live down here in this Cuba folder. If you're not sure where your images are, if you don't have that folder open, remember the right click trick and then just go to folder in library, so it takes me there. Okay, so what's going to happen next is I'm going to check that time zone issue. Okay, so I've sorted the images by capture time. I want to make sure that I've done that. Okay, so the very first images that I shot should be at the top. And the very last ones that I shot should be at the bottom. So I shot the first ones at the hotel. That looks about right. And the last few I shot were night photos. That also looks about right. The next thing I'm going to show you how to do is to fix a boo-boo. So one thing that I forgot to do when I got my Fuji, it had actually been in for a repair. Long story. I'm not going to get into that in this particular tutorial, but they had replaced the motherboard in it, and so it reset everything to factory defaults, and I didn't set the time on it. I believe I set the date, but I didn't set the time. So to fix that, let's just confirm first of all what time we want it to be, and we can actually set all of them because they're all wrong by the same amount. Okay, so I'm going to look at the last one, and it says that it was shot at 4, but it was actually shot at 7 because I know that sunset was about 6 o'clock or 6:15 at the time, and it's telling me that this one here was shot at 4 o'clock, which is sunset, and that's absolutely incorrect. So I'm going to assume they are all 3 hours. They need to go 3 hours forward. So I'm going to do a select all, which is Command or Control A on your keyboard to select everything. Making sure that they're sorted by capture time already. Go up to the metadata menu at the top and choose Edit Capture Time. Okay, so it's going to ask, do I want to adjust to a specific date and time? I could do that. Or shift by a certain number of hours. Yes, that's what I want to do. Okay, so I actually want to go +3. So it's going to change it from 354 to 654, which is what I wanted to do. Okay, so it's going to adjust all of them by the same amount 3 hours forward. Now it's telling you right here, this cannot be undone. So be sure before you click this, okay? So you're actually changing the data that's the hidden data that goes along with your file about what time it was shot, okay? So once you do this, you can't go back. So I'm gonna click change all, and it does it just that fast. You can see the status bar and it is already done. So let's just check our last one here. And now it's telling me date and time of original is 7 o'clock. Okay? So it's telling me the date and time that it was digitized was 4:01, but the corrected time is now 7. Okay? So we have done that. Now the second piece that I said I was going to show you how to do is to rename. So we're going to select all again, Command A. And we're going to go up into our library menu and choose rename. It may be under a different menu if you're under Windows, but you're looking for rename, okay? So I'm going to have the same preset options here and the same templates that I had when we were in the import dialog box. Notice that these look very similar. Okay, so the one that I had with the shoot and the date and the 4 digits is going to give me something called Untitled Shoot January 15th. Okay, I want to make sure that I put my title in there. So I want to have Cuba in there. Okay, so it's going to call it Cuba, January 15th, so that's not January 2015, and it's going to give it a number. Make sure we're starting at 1, okay, with 4 digits. So if I'm happy with that naming structure, I'm going to hit OK, and it's going to name everything. Okay, one thing I want to do before I do that is I'm actually going to sort by file type, because I've got a few things in here that I have done some work on. So I'm going to sort and filter out by file type. Okay, so I don't want any JPEGs. I only want the raw files. Okay, so notice that I have a TIFF file, which is a HDR that I did, and a Photoshop document, which is a layered file that I did, and a few JPEGs. Oh, I will sort those. Okay, so my camera is shooting JPEG when I'm doing special effects. So I'm going to sort the RAW and the JPEGs only and leave out the other two. Okay, so that's just a quick filter. So I'm only applying the renaming to those files. So I'm going to rename Cuba and number 1. So you'll see how quickly this goes. Once I hit OK, it literally just takes a few seconds and you'll see the file names change right before your eyes. There we go. Okay, so the file names are all done, and you'll notice that they're all going sequentially now, okay, from the beginning of the first ones that I shot. Okay, so those are all of the things that I do when I import. The other thing that we can do if you wish is to convert to DNG. Okay, and that is done under the same menu. So right under rename, under the library menu, is convert to DNG. Okay, simply you just select them all and hit that, and it will convert them for you. Okay, it will give you a dialog box asking you a few things, Do you only want to convert raw files? Yes. So if it's any JPEG selected, it can't work on them. Okay. Do you want to delete the originals after? I highly suggest that you say yes, because otherwise it's going to keep the raw file and the DNG, and it's going to take up more hard drive space, which is not what you want. So delete the originals after it's converted. I use the file extension. You can use capitals or non. That's totally your choice. And then again, you can set a JPEG preview. Okay. So once you click that, it's going to take some time to process. So I'm not going to do that right now, but I just want to show you where to do that and what options to choose if you want to convert after you import. So there's one more thing that I'm going to do. I've actually got one more card, because I took along a little point and shoot camera. So there was a couple of evenings where we went out and I didn't want to even take the Fuji. So I downsized from my Canon 5D to the Fuji to go a little bit lighter. And then on evenings out where we were just going for dinner or something, I just took the little Panasonic. So I've actually got quite a few JPEGs. This camera does shoot RAW, but I chose to just shoot JPEG with it. So the other thing is I'm going to download these images as well. Again, make sure your camera is turned off before you remove the card. So I'm going to swap cards and I'm going to download the images off of here. These are all JPEGs, okay? And I'll show you what we can do, because these were shot intermingled with the other ones. So we can actually get them renamed. We can get them sorted by timestamp from the Fuji and this card and mix them and then rename so that they're all sequential, okay? So totally your choice, but I'm going to come back once I've got these all imported. Okay, once again, my images have finished importing. You can see they are in the previous import section again. This time I brought in 298, and they've all been put into that same Cuba folder. So if I right click and go to folder and library, I am there. Okay, now I want to make sure that these are all sorted in the right order and mixed in with all the other ones. Okay, so I'm looking at them, and we took a ride in the old cars, and then we went to a show that evening. That looks about right. And then the next ones I had, oh, we're way down the road here. So it looks like it is intermingling them well. The next ones were some dancing and then evening out. So let's check this one. And that is in the right order. Okay, so those are all in the right order, but now you'll notice that the naming is screwed up because I named these first ones from the Fuji, and now these are mixed in and they don't name right. They're not sequential. So we can actually start over and do a complete rename all over again. So I'm going to do that sort one more time. And I'm going to make sure that I'm only using certain file types. And I want the JPEGs. I want the RAW. I don't want the Photoshop. I don't want the TIFF. But I am going to name the videos, because I did take a few videos with the little camera, and I did take a few with my Fuji as well. So we're going to rename those three things, and not the Photoshop and the TIFF. I'm going to select all again. I'm going to make sure that they're sorted with the first ones at the top. Yes. And I'm going to go back to that same rename dialog box. And I'm going to change it up slightly. So I'm just going to change the year to show 4 digits instead. Okay, so just so it's changing it a little bit so that I can see that it's done something. So now it's going to say Cuba, Jan 2015, and still add 4 digits. Okay, so I'm going to hit OK. And away it goes. And you should see the changes come up right away. And it's done. So it's just that quick. And then we can scroll down to where we had the first show. You're getting a really quick look at our Cuba trip here. Really quick. And lots of fun activities. Oh, there's our first photo walk with our guide, Roger. Okay, so there's the show, and you can see that the JPEGs from the little camera were renamed as well. Okay, so I obviously haven't edited yet because that is completely out of focus that I shot by accident of myself. Okay, so basically those are the things that you can do when you're importing, but I wanted to show you the rename and the conversion part to DNG after the fact, because if you forgot or if you messed it up, you know that you can always fix it. So even if you renamed your files wrong, or they're in the wrong order, or maybe you edit a few out and you want to rename them sequentially so that you don't have any gaps in your numbering, all you have to do is select them all again from the beginning and rename them, and it will replace the original names and numbers. Okay, so you don't have to stress about that. So I'm going to leave this video here. That's all for importing. I have another little trick that I'm going to show you, and I'm going to make a separate video for that. So if you want to learn more about how I deal with my catalogs when I'm traveling, because I actually make a temporary catalog that I then export and import back into my main catalog. And I'm going to show you how I do that in a separate video. So if you're interested in that, click on through to the next one. If not, I hope you got some good tips out of importing that you can use in your workflow and help you understand Lightroom a little better. Take care until next time.